Yo, comrades! Hope you're all doing well. We're finally here. We're often finally here. I know I say that a lot, but oh, what the hell? Got some dirt on my shirt. Anyway, it's the Evangelion 3.01 plus 1.101 Thrice Upon a Time. This is the final movie in the Evangelion series thus far, perhaps forever. This came out a couple years later, so we spent the first portion of this movie just recalling what happened in the last three movies, because from the production standpoint, from what I remember, it's the first three movies came out like year after year after year, and there might have been a 2-year gap in one of those. But then this one came out like 3 or 4 years later, and so I think they were just trying to catch people up because it's been a while since these things had been on in the movies, right? Over in Japan, at least. I think they came out here too. I think I saw something about that. Anyway, so after we get all caught up, and if you want to get caught up, I have 3 videos the last 3 weeks that you can go look at and get the gist of like the stories going on and the differences and whatnot from the TV series. At this point, the show is like completely different, so there's no reason to talk about the differences. The first 1.5 movies are like the series with like slight nuances and differences, but then after that, it just kind of goes completely off the rails. In a good way. I mentioned this in the previous movie that I was discussing the story of, that I like the differences. I still like the series better, but it's interesting to see like this different take. And, more Asuka is always good. And then Mari, who's also alluring, is around as well. Okay, so we start off hard, as in we get this like sweet battle. So the Vile is trying to do something with Tokyo. I think they're in Tokyo. So they call it like something Sacred City or something. I didn't catch the full thing. Anyway, so this city that everything's covered in red, right? So this whole red thing with everything has something to do with these impacts. And so then they're all in suits, like all the kind of techs. They land down on this thing, and there's Mari with like the pink Evangelion, but she's got like these cute like robot arms with like guns and stuff. Because if you remember, the Evangelion units got beat up pretty bad in the previous movie. So they're still in repairs. And we find out that it's been 2 years since they like got together, or since all that stuff happened. So anyway, so they're doing this stuff, and then they get attacked by like, they call them like 420 or not 420, I think it's 240 Evangelions, which are these like, they're like mini Evangelions, and they're or mini angels, or it's whatever. It's like all crazy bullshit at this point, but this swarm of things, and they're trying to hack into the system to do something. And then Mari goes off, and we get this sweet ass like mecha battle where she's like flying around, like killing stuff and killing more stuff. And then there's like then they break, then like the nerve angels or Evas like break through this barrier, and they start stomping in, and it's like the battle against the cube or the floating diamond or whatever. And so there's these Ava units that are like charging up power, and there's a big one, and so they utilize the Wunder to move all like the destroyers to create like a barrier, and then the thing shoots this like giant ultra ray that like blasts through the destroyers, and at the very last second, Mari comes up and deflects the ray, and then the thing starts trying to power up, and so Mari charges at it and like throws like destroyers at it, these like busted up destroyers, and then she gets in there and just beats the shit out of it and destroys it. And at that point, it's pretty tense because we got Maya leading this group of dudes who are trying to like hack into the system, and then finally, with like 11 seconds left before like the system's gonna explode or some craziness, they hack into it, and then the whole area turns from red to like normal color, and then all these skyscrapers start popping up, and we see Evangelion parts in all these buildings, and then I think Masato and the Exo, to me it's like, I don't think that's Ritsuko. I think she died. Because she died in the movie, the TV series. I just remember she died in the movies before the third impact. Because that might just be her, but no one calls her Ritsuko. They all just call her Exo, and she has like no science stuff going on. She gets very little character stuff going on at all. So that's why in my head I'm like, is that supposed to be Ritsuko? She talks about Maya. Like Maya is Maya from the previous, so she's there, and she's much more hardened. Because she was like a little bitch before, right? Like crying in the corner and all that stuff. And now she's like super hardened, like making fun of people for being bitches. So you go, girl. But I can't tell. Because Ritsuko, I thought, had like a beauty mark on her eye, and I don't think the Exo does, but she's got short blonde hair, and she's always hanging out with Masato talking about stuff. So I don't know who else it would possibly be. Maybe it's just like a new person. Anyway, it's not really that relevant because we don't deal with anything with her, with the Magi, with her mom. She's just like a character that's there. So, I mean, Ritsuko really in the whole movie series has been very like sidelined as like a character. She's like kind of Misato's friend, and there's like some relation there, and then it's like thrown away. Anyway, so once I get that, they're like, all right, cool. Now we can rebuild AV Unit 2, and then we can fix AV Unit 8, who's Mari's unit. And it's like, cool. Then we get like the credits, and in the credits we just see like Shinji following Rei and Asuka for a while, and then they come upon, and then at some point, Shinji like passes out, and then he wakes up, and it's Toji. It's his homie from like back in the day. Hey, he's alive, and now he's a doctor. 14 years is a lot for a guy. Anyway, and so then we spend like the first hour of this movie just mostly hanging out with this village, and it's like Toji's still there, Nerd's there. Toji married the student body president, which there was always something there. Asuka's just walking around with like no bra and no top, just like she's wearing like just a jacket over boobs and panties most of the time, and she's naked for a portion of it. We find out that Toji has a daughter, and that there's this whole like there's just like people enjoying life in the post-apocalypse, essentially, or doing the best they can. So you have like these old women planting rice and doing crops and stuff. You have men working on stuff. Rei ends up just like being like really adapting to the village life and really enjoying her time there and learning about thank you and good morning and goodbye. And Suzy Hara, I think is her name, the student body president lady who's all grown up now, she's like teaching Rei how to be like a human being, and then Rei's going out to work in the rice fields, and they're teaching her, and she's taking like baths with them afterwards, and then she starts like reading, and she starts like hanging out with the little kids, and she's just having a grand fucking old time. And this is really, it's almost like an hour, not a full hour, because there's like the credits and then the opening scene, so it's almost like 30-40 minutes of like, it's like 30 minutes of just like montage. and the whole time Shinji's just being sad, so he's being sad. Asuka's making fun of him. She forces him to eat because he's refusing, and he throws up when she sees she has a collar like he had. So the collars are not just for Shinji, right? The collars are for the Evangelion pilots, probably to keep them under control. And then he like wanders off and hangs out at this old nerve headquarters and just sits there for days. And then Asuka ends up going out there to spy on him a few times, and then Rei ends up going out there a bunch and keeps giving him food and trying to chat with him, and he's like freaking out. And at some point, he has like a total breakdown, and he's like, "Why is everyone being so nice to me? Why are you so nice to me?" And she's like, "Because we like you." And he's like, "What? Why do you like me? I'm a bitch." And it's like, she's like, "Because you're nice to us and you talk to us," right? Which is true with her and Asuka specifically. It's like no one else has ever shown them like an ounce of humanity besides Shinji. So especially Rei, like no one, like she's like a clone who got treated like garbage and left all to herself, and then Shinji like freed her essentially. And then Asuka is kind of the same thing. She's also just kind of like a broken tool. And just angry, and Shinji like treated her like kindly and did things for her, like making her lunch and stuff. And even like 14 years later, she's still kind of like is there. She's mad at him because he's not growing up and being a man, any of that stuff. Anyway, so eventually Shinji starts coming around. He starts going off and doing stuff with the nerd. We learn that there's like this crazy device that keeps like the third impact bullshit like out of the way, and we see that there's like these crazy like Evangelion things that are covered in red that like wander the land. They call them like the Lost or some crazy bullshit. They're like, man, this movie is whack. Like it's so crazy. Not whack in a bad way, like whack in like what the fuck am I watching? Anyway, it's great. All of it is great. And this it's like a slice of life anime. For the majority of this time. And then at some point, Nerd takes, who's like the local handyman, he takes Shinji over to like this research area. Oh, and there's this Credit, I think, or Cret, is like this organization that like supports all these villages and helps like keep open lines between them so they can like trade and, they can like survive in like this post-apocalyptic future. And everyone's doing like okay, they're like getting by, right? And there's even a conversation between Rei and they start calling her Miss No Name or something like that. And then at some point they're like, hey, we're gonna give you like an actual name. And then she asks Shinji to give her a name, and he's like, I gotta think about it. And then Shinji's like learning how to fish and like all this crazy stuff, and it's like, holy shit, what's going It's wild. And Asuka's just being there playing her crazy video game and spying on Shinji and, talking about, at some point Rei's like, what are you doing? Why aren't you helping? And she's like, because I protect the village, that's why. And she's like, oh. And then when she's like, why aren't you helping Shinji? Shinji's like, what? And she's like, are you protecting the village too? And then he has another breakdown at that point. He's like, I don't do shit. I don't do anything. And she's like, you should help the village. You should come. And like Rei kind of really brings him out. At some point, Rei's like looking at her hand, and there's like, it's glowing, and she has like these memory of being in the vat, and she's like, without nerve, I'll die. And which is really sad because she's like, I want to live here. I don't ever want to leave this village. I love these people. I want to be with them. And then later on, she has like a revelation where she's like, I'm about to die. And she's like, it's sad. I can't be with the boy I like or be in this village that I like. And then Shinji is like with her over at this place, and she gives him, she had the recorder thingy. So he gives it to her. She gives it to him, and he's like, thank you so much. And she's like, thank you so much for everything. And she leaves a note that's like super precious. It's like, good morning, good night, thank you and goodbye, because she learned those things are very important for like humans to like exist. And so she's with Shinji, and she's like, goodbye, Shinji. Or I can't remember what she says. I think she says thank you, and then she steps back from him, and her like black suit turns white, like her original white suit from the series, or even before, like the original Rey. And there's a couple times she sees Rey, like the original Rey, and Shinji sees Rey, like out of the corner of his eye, like he's losing his mind, kind of. But just it's not like a lot. It's just like a brief moment. And he's like, "What did I see that?" Anyway, she turns into like original Rey essentially with like the suit and everything, and then she just like fades. She's like disappears. She like blows up, and she's like, "Holy fuck!" Sorry. So. The nerd takes Shinji to go see this research area where they're doing research on stuff, and there he meets, what is it, Ryoji Koji or whatever? Anyway, but it's like, oh, Koji? Like, the guy, Misato's boyfriend? And he's like, yeah, that's their son. And, like, he doesn't know that Misato's his mom. And then, like, he died. And then they say something about him dying to stop the third impact. And I was like, I never saw that, but I need to go back and look at the second movie, because someone was like, the third impact stopped because Karu throws the Staff of Longinus at Shinji, but maybe it was Kaji. Maybe I misread that. So I apologize for giving you misinformation. But like I said, I didn't see it, so I was just regurgitating what I saw online. So at some point, I will insert it in here to confirm or deny. But that's, people keep saying it. It comes up a couple times, because then later on the Exo's talking to Misato, and they have this like arc where they kept Kaji was like Ryoji Kaji was storing all of like Earth stuffs that was going to be destroyed with like the Human Instrumentality Project, so that it could be sent into space to be protected when like the Earth's like Instrumentality Project did. And then Misato likes to hide out there a lot, apparently. What else? Oh, okay. So yeah, so then the Thunder comes, and then Shinji goes, and they lock him in like a cage. They don't put like another necklace on him, because they're never gonna let him out of that cage again. Asuka delivers some stuff, which includes like a picture of her nephew to Sakura, I think is her first name, the medic lady who's the younger sister of Toji. And she's super excited about that. And then Mari jumps on Asuka and is being super like lovey-dovey and like, oh, I missed you, Asuka, blah blah blah. And I think it's just Mari being Mari, of course, but it's super hot because Mari's hot and Asuka's super hot. Don't worry, everybody, they're like 28 years old at this point. Anyway, so or 20, they're like 30 at this point, because it's been 2 years, so it's 16 plus 14 is 30. Damn, they're like 30 years old. Nice, totally legal. So anyway, you find out that Mari loves to read, and Asuka's just playing games and trying to ignore, she being Asuka, being ignorable. Mari's being super like touchy-feely and cute and stuff, talking about the boy. And then she's like, oh, you got a new boyfriend now? Is that what you guys been doing this whole time? And then Asuka's like, he doesn't need a girlfriend, he needs a mother. Facts. Oh boy. At this point, things really start to pick the fuck up. I thought it was going fast before. Au contraire, my friend. So I'm trying to think the order of things that we need to really get involved with. Okay. So it's time. Nerve is moving to the Black Moon. Something Black Moon. Black Moon's going to be something important. Gendo and the professor, they're trying to activate the fourth impact for human instrumentality, yada, 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 right? So they got Unit 13. They're going to utilize Unit 13. Vale, which is like Misato and crew, they're tracking that. So it's like, all right, time to reactivate the AV units. We get this whole, and then we get a bunch of stuff. And I'm not doing this necessarily, or I'm doing this as like when I call it. So there's a whole thing where like the rebels wear blue armbands. And so this guy has like a whole bunch of blue armbands because everyone of his companions dies. He wears it. He's one of the new characters, the pilot. Misato's got Kaji's blue armband from when he gave it to her right before he like sacrificed himself to end like the third impact. And then we see Asuka and Mari's giving Asuka a haircut and talking about change and like being human and whatnot, because they both know that Asuka's not really human. And then we get some fan service where they're like changing into their new suits and they're just like naked, but we only see behind. Well, anyway, so then they're headed off to get in their Evangelions and do whatever. But then Asuka's like, I want to take a detour first. So then they go to talk to Shinji, and Mari like jumps on Shinji's back, and she's like, and covers his eyes like, you remember me? And he's like, I have no idea who you are. And she's like, oh, come on, brown hair, glasses, big boobs. And he's like, parachute girl? And I was like, oh yeah, they have never interacted outside of like that scene from the end of the first movie. Like, we've seen her and she's been around and been like definitely like a fan favorite because she's got rockin' boobs and a good attitude. But it's like, oh yeah, they've never like met besides that one time when she's like, forget me. And then she's like, yeah, I'm Mari, illustrious, whatever, Nakayami or whatever. And then he like turns and he's like, Asuka? And she's like, and then they kind of, she's like, you're still being a child. And he's like, I figured out, or she asks him like, why am I so mad at you? Or he's like, I figured out why you were so mad at me. And she's like, what? And he's like, when you were piloting Ava Unit 3, I did nothing. Like, I didn't fight you, but I also didn't rescue you. And so you're upset because I was frozen, whatever. And then she's like, she says something about like, hey, that lunch you gave me that one time was pretty good. So kind of the stuff I was talking about before, where it's like, no one's shown her kindness or treated her like, and then she's like, I'm trying to remember if she says, I had a crush on you, or I know you had a crush on me. One of those two. Anyway, but I think she says, I had a crush on you, but I'm an adult now. And then they leave, and Shinji just kind of stays there. And then battle stations, everyone go, and then we get this cool ship battle, and it's like the professor is like piloting this ship, and there's like 3 of these ships, and they're trying to set up this whole thing, and 2 of the ships set up this thing, and they start activating, and they create like the wings of some fucking thing, and then the Wunder's like fighting back and fighting, and they're going back and forth and fight, and then they're like, all right, drop the Ava, so Ava Unit 8 and Ava Unit 2 go out, and they start killing all these like mini monster Ava thingies, and they're like shooting them up and blasting them up and doing whatever, and kill, and then like Asuka finally lands in front of like Ava Unit 13 while Mari's still kind of fighting everything off and holding things off and kind of getting beat up, and at one point like her arm gets blown off essentially, or the Ava Unit's arm blown off, and you can see like the corruption. I was just playing Ender Magnolia, so it's like the Blight. Tie it all in, right? Anyway, I think Binary Haze, the company makes that, is a Japanese company, so there's definitely some like overlap in like cultural blah blah blah. Anyway, okay, so then Asuka walks up and she pulls out this like cross thing and goes to like kill Ava Unit 13 or destroy it, but then there's an AT field, and she's like, what? This thing can't have an AT field. And she's like, is this my AT field? Is this my Ava being too scared to fight this thing? And then Mari, and then Misato, and I think it is Ritsuko. I think we get somewhat confirmation. Gendo, okay, well, I'll get there. But someone calls her a name, and I'm like, I don't know if that's her last name. I always just call her Ritsuko, but I think that's supposed to be her. Anyway, like, suspicions. I thought she died in the first movie, or the second movie, but I guess not. I'd have to go back. Anyway, so... okay, so then they're fighting, and then they're about to like blast these ships that are like creating these like wings that are necessary for like the 4th impact or whatever, and then they get like speared and they're done, and then they get like infested by like another Evangelion, and it's like trouble times, and so they're fucked. And then they see Gendo just like standing out there. So Misato and Ritsuko, or the EXO, they head out, and they're just like standing there, and they start getting into like a philosophical debate with him about whatever, and then Ritsuko just like shoots at him, or the EXO, with a gun and hits him in the head, and then he just like stands back up and keeps talking. He shoots him a couple more times, and he's like picking up brain matter and putting in his head, and he's like, I'm no longer human, I'm a god. And they're like, you activated the Nebuchadnezzar key all the way from all the way back in like the first movie to make it, it's like he combined himself with like Adam's stuff so that he could be like a god. And then he talks about how like, and then we get this whole thing about how there were 2 choices laid before us. We could submit to the angels and let them rule, or we could rip divinity from them and become the new divine children of God or whatever. And that Seilei's whole thing was to take option number 2 and something. And then Masato and EXO are like, well, that's not what happened, something. And then Gendo's like something about being a god and whatever. And then he starts to like float up into Eva Unit 13. And then Shinji's out there because he escaped because the whole thing like got destroyed, right? The ship with the invasion and everything. And then we see Mari, she's like freaking out, and she's activated like beast mode. And she's like eating the Evangelion that's on the ship, corrupting it or whatnot, and like growing her arms back and stuff. Oh, I totally missed this whole fucking thing. Okay, so before all this happens, Asuka's like, fuck, I gotta do something about this. And she tears her eye patch off, and then she like pulls out this like thing. It's this rod. It's the same, it's a mini version of that rod we saw in the village that's like keeping all the angels at bay and whatnot. And then she's like, activate something. And then Mari's like, no, you're going to become an angel. And then so she becomes the 9th angel? Something like that. So that she can tear through this field. And so she starts to like break through. She grows like super big, and she's like freaking out. And she's got like a blue eye and all this stuff. And she starts screaming. And then she's about to like, she's like tearing off the AT field, the 13th angel. And then the 13th angel like pulls out like the spears that are in it. And then it like grabs her and like punches the shit out of her and stuff. She's like, rah! And then she sees like Asuka, like the original Asuka, because remember these are all like clones of Asuka, and she's like, are you the original? And she's like, yes, come with me. And she's like, I'm not gonna go with you, fuck you. And she's like, oh, that's funny, you don't have a choice. And then she kind of absorbs her, and then the collar, after she gets absorbed and she's gone, then the collar goes off and explodes because they like missed their chance again, right? These collars useless. Oh man. Anyway, so then they're like, so then the 13th Angel absorbed Ayanami, and now it's absorbed Shikinami, which is Asuka's last name in this version, right? Not the original version. And so then going back forward in time to where Gendo's talking to Ritsuko and Misato, she's like, he calls her by her last name, the Ritsuko, I think. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. But, and then at some point Misato's like, is this worth sacrificing Asuka for? And then Gendo makes this comment. He's like, yes, the Ayanami and Shikinami pilot systems or pilots, right? Because they're clones. There's like multiple of them. Have served their purpose of combining in the dual entry plugs. They got like the soul of the Ayanami and the soul of the best Shikinami, and they combined them in AV Unit 13 to cause the fourth impact. Apparently, that's like the goal. And so he floats away, and then Shinji's standing there, and he's like, "Father!" And he's like, "Misato, I will pilot AV Unit 1," which is like a callback to all the way in like the first movie and like the beginning of the series when he decided he was going to stand up and do what's right and all this stuff. And then so yeah, there we go. And then Misato's like, "Are you sure you have to fight your dad?" So there are definitely some people who are not a big fan of Shinji going back into the AV Unit 1 because family members died or whatever craziness. There's the pink-haired lady, and she's been kind of like talking about Shinji or like appalled by Shinji like quite often, but also Sakura. Sakura being Toji's little sister. They both pulled guns out on Misato and Shinji, and they're like yelling, and they're like yelling back and forth, and Shinji's being very stoic and just kind of like standing there. And then Sakura like fires at Shinji, and Misato steps in the way and takes the bullet, and then she apologizes. And then she yells at everybody that, she's Shinji's mom, and if anyone's going to be to blame for anything, it's her because blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, what's going on? Thanks for saving. Yep. So at that juncture, Mari shows up, and she's with AV Unit 8, and she's like, "Come on, Shinji, let's go." And they're heading over to Ritsuko at some point is like, they're in minus space. We can't follow. Only the Evangelions can go to minus space. The fuck is minus space, you say? I don't know. It's some crazy bullshit. Anyway, because they're in the LCL or because of Evangelion poison or something. I don't know. So at that point, Shinji and Mari head in there, and then Shinji's like, "All right, Mari, I'll catch you later." And then opens the door so we can head out and go into AV Unit 1. Before he goes, though, Mari's like, "Hey, wait for me. I'll come get you, I promise. No matter what." And he's like, "All right, sounds good." So then he heads into the entry plug where there's, hey, it's Rei, only she's got long blue hair. Awesome. Just like in Nikkei Goddess of Victory. It's the first time I've seen it. Anyway, she's like a phantom or whatever. And remember that so you had Kaoru and Asuka in AV Unit 13 who got absorbed because, I don't know, they need an angel, and Asuka turned into angel, the angel number 9, which I think is the angel that took her over before. So I guess like she was able to overcome that, but they had to put like that anti-angel thing that like Nerd Boy was telling him about before. Anyway, so that Kaoru's dead because he was an angel. They got to get Asuka, and that's how Gendo can pilot because of the dual entry plug. So then AV Unit 1 is being piloted by like original Rei or something. And then Shinji's like, "Hey, I got this, Rei. You can go." And she's like, "All right, thanks." Back in like, I don't know, the regular world, Ritsuko and Maya are in shock because originally they were like, when Shinji first came back to life at the beginning of the previous movie, they were like, he has 0% sync rate. Like, how can he pilot an AV with 0% sync rate? And then Ritsuko's like, hold on. And she does some technology magic, and they're like, oh no, he has infinite. He just looked like 0 because it was so massive. Like the closest thing to 0 is infinity, right? They say some bullshit like that. I mean, it's true, but anyway, so at that point, Shinji like regrows all the limbs that got blown off from the Evangelion, and then he pulls out one of the spears, the Cassius, I think, and then him and his dad, time to fight. And they talk about that, and Gendo has this whole thing about like one being the spear of hope and one being the spear of despair or something. Anyway, back over with the Wunder. Misato is talking about like, hey, so it seems to me, I don't know where the fuck she got this, that these spears were created by these ships, like the ships, like there's those 4 ships, one of them the professor was piloting around, and then her ship, the Wunder that they stole from Nerve all the way back in the day, that they used these ships somehow to create spears. And so Shinji might need this extra spear to defeat his dad and stop the fourth impact or some bullshit. Dude, it gets so wild. It was really hard to follow. Anyway, so then Ritsuko's like, yeah, we can do that. And so they start working on it. And then while they're working on it, Misato's getting ready to like plow into giant Ray. Oh, that's right. So in like the dream world, Gendo and Shinji, they go back and forth about like stuff, and they start fighting, and they fight in like the memories because the negative zone or minus zone or whatever the fuck it's called has like no form. So they all the forms are based on like the LCL affecting their memories. So like Gendo and Asuka are in Unit 13, and we don't see Asuka at all at this point. She's like just absorbed. And then Shinji is in Unit 1, and they both have spears, and they're just fighting. They fight like they fight in like Tokyo 3, they fight in like the classroom, they fight in like the kitchen where Shinji and Misato and Asuka were living. So all of that, they're just going back and forth about like the spears are evenly matched. Like there's no way Shinji can beat him because something and something. Anyway, so the ship, so then they're like, we got to create this thing, and they get the ship going, and they get the spear making thing going, and then everyone like evacuates. Like Ritsuko takes Maya and all the rest of the people that I don't know any other names, and they get out of there, but Misato sticks around because, oh yeah, so at some point Shinji and his dad end up at like Black Lilith, which is like the Lilith but with a mask, and then it comes to life, and he's going to use that for like human instrumentality, and they can all unify and goo it up or something. So we get giant Ray again, or giant Yui, right? And so she comes into the real world as well, and it's like, all right, time to go. And so then I guess Mari went back to the real world at some point because she's over here now. And they're using the ship to make, they call it the Lance of Gaius later, when it looks like a combination of two lances or spears or whatever. And by making this, they'll give Shinji the power to like rewrite the world or something. And then, yeah, so Mari comes back. She destroys the rest of the enemy ships and just beats the shit out of everybody. And then she talks about the Lilin, and that they don't need any more vessels of Adam or something. But then she wishes them all to rest in peace. Like, okay. And then, and the Black Lilith is the imaginary Evangelion, and it can only exist in the minus space because it exists because of the imagination of like humans. Yeah, it gets so like it gets more bizarre. Like End of Evangelion is the least weird, and then the regular season with its like ending. Actually, no, that is the least weird. It's just kind of like meta commentary on like life and depression and getting through stuff. And then End of Evangelion is like bizarre, and this is just like, what the fuck? Like, I feel like nothing makes sense, and it doesn't get any better. Like, I'll get to it when I'm done. Okay, so because only humans can perceive this thing, because it's in our fantasies, something, that's how humans are going to like take over something. All right. Well, anyway, so this is how they're going to cause the fourth impact and human instrumentality, because so Gendo can get back with his wife again, right? All right. So at some point around here, Mari goes to confront the professor on the bridge of like the ship before she destroys it or something. And they have like a weird conversation that comes out of nowhere, in my opinion, where she's like, oh, how are you here? You're going to die. And he's like, oh yeah, I've overstepped myself and been reckless, but you know, it is what it is. And then he calls her Judas Iscariot. And she's like, I haven't been called by that in a long time. And I'm like, are we ever going to get answers to any of this shit? And the surprise spoiler is that no, we get no answers to any of this bullshit. Go find a philosophy YouTuber that talks about this. Maybe they can explain it. I know who Judas Iscariot is, and I know who Jesus is, and I understand the whole concept, but I don't know. Maybe they're going from the Book of Judas, where like Judas was commanded by Jesus Christ to actually betray him to like fulfill the resurrection of the world. That's the only thing that makes any sense to me, because actual Judas Iscariot was just an asshole. Anyway, at that point, he says something about having something for her so she can do something, and then he like the whole room goes dark, and then she like merges with like Evangelion. So she goes back into 8, and then she merges with like 9, 10, 11, 12, and she keeps saying like, okay, 9, 10, 11, 12, okay, 8, 9, 10, 11, and it's like, okay, Mari. Okay. But then she heads up to the Wunder, who's just like Misato at this point, and she gets on there and like helps push it through the eyeball of the Ray so that the spear can get inside like the negative zone, so that Shinji can get it and like rewrite the world. Cool. So at that point, Shinji and Gendo are just like doing father-dad time for the first time, and like, hey, if we just done this at the very get-go, like none of this would have happened, I guess, because Gendo essentially reveals that he's afraid of his son, and that everything he did, this whole project, I mean, there was Seele too, which was doing stuff, but Gendo could have stopped that a long time ago, was just so that he could reconnect with his wife, who died, and like because of the Evangelion project or whatever, and that the whole Ray thing and everything he's done is just to get back together with Yui, because he couldn't go, and he was sad, and he had to like punish himself by separating himself from Shinji, which is like some bullshit excuse, right, for like a deadbeat dad. Anyway, I get super distressed about it. And
and it's just like Shinji finally like mans up and is very stoic and this is like the best of Shinji, right? Which I don't like a lot about this movie, to be completely honest. But Shinji, like his arc is pretty good. So then he's like, I just want to learn more about you. I don't want to fight anymore. There's no need for this. Like we got to figure out the past. And then we get Gendo's like whole backstory. Like he was just some nerd like Shinji who didn't have a lot of friends and was scared and sad and he just did his own thing. And then Yui like opened him up to the world and he felt like love for the first time. And then we see like Mari and the professor. So Mari apparently, or like original Mari, I don't know if this is clone Mari or she's another EVA pilot that just can't age or whatever. So she was around. So that's why apparently in my estimation, is she keeps calling him puppy or doggy or whatever, is because that was like his nickname as like a little child. When like she was like his aunt essentially, not like officially, and then when Yui died with the whole Evangelion project or whatnot, that like he kind of like completely lost it and he turned his back on humanity and his back on Shinji, and he apologizes and everything. And then Shinji essentially uses he gets the spear at that point and he's like, be at peace. And then his dad like finally becomes to terms with like being with Yui and being dead and being like okay with like the world as it is and like passing on the torch to his son. And then we get some like very bizarre scenes that like I don't fucking stand like any of this shit. And like I understand it because I'm watching it and I can like I'm gonna walk you through it, but it's like I don't understand the choice to do this. So the first thing is he's like, okay, gotta rescue Asuka. And so he goes into like Asuka's past and we see that she was a clone. There was a whole bunch of them and they like apparently fought to the death or something, and she had to keep training and pushing herself so she could be number one. So she was like the best out of all these Asukas. And then we get some scenes with her and like the nerd guy when he was like a little bit older, because she was like a child when Shinji was a child, right? And they like ran into each other or something. I don't know. It's hard to tell what's like real and what's just like some old bullshit. Anyway, the whole thing kind of like wraps up. So yeah, we saw this when she was in the village too. So there is some subtle implications that she is going to return to that village and that she's going to get together like officially with nerd guy who's now an adult, and then she's going to be an adult too or something. Like there's some like not implications, impliements that's going to happen. Anyway, we do get like a throwback to End of Evangelion. So Shinji's standing on the beach and Asuka's laying there, but she's not like eye patched up and she's wearing her suit and it's all torn up. And she's like, hey, I know you said that you had a crush on me, or like you liked me. I liked you too. And it's like, yeah, when they were like young and teenagers, like if things had just like worked out, they would have been together. And I like that part of the End of Evangelion a lot more, when they're like kind of together in like that romantic comedy, a slice of life thing. But in this, it's just like, okay, yeah, when we were young, we were together, but now we're adults and like time is gone, and like it's kind of sad. And like I like Asuka a lot, so I'm always kind of like, I feel like fuck this ending. Anyway, so then he like reaches into AV Unit 3 and like pulls her plug out and sends her back to reality and back to like the village, along with all the people who escaped from the Wunder. So Masato gets destroyed, like the Wunder gets destroyed and she dies. But all the other people, they get like sent back to the village, and like that little nerve station that Shinji was like crying about at the beginning, they're all like, you can see like there's footprints going away from like the beach in that lake area. And then all the escape pods and like the entry plug are just like hanging out there. So it implies that like Asuka and the rest of the people from the Wunder like came back to the village and everything was okay because Shinji like cured Evangelion. Oh, we're gonna get to that. We haven't got to that point yet. Sorry. All right. So then he jumps to Karu, and then Karu's like really sad, and Shinji points out, or he's like, I was happy because you were happy, and then Shinji's like, no, you need your own happiness. You just felt happy because I was happy. You didn't have your own, and so you misconstrued your happiness for my happiness, something like that. Where because Shinji was happy, Karu felt happy, but instead Karu needs to find his own happiness, right? So, and then Kaji shows up, and there's like a crazy story with like he's calling Karu like commander, and they're like hanging out and being like best friends forever, which is cool. I like Karu and Kaji being homies. It makes sense. They're both like super rad dudes who just like do whatever the fuck they want. So I'm a big fan of that. And then they kind of wander off, and then we're back in like this hangar thing. So like Shinji's like giving peace to all the people who like were absorbed by like the Evangelion 13, so they can have like their own life. With Asuka, it's literally he just goes through her past, tells her he loved her and that she's worth loving, and that there's Kesaki or did I write down my notes this time finally? Nerd guy. Reciprocated a crush. Kensuke. So Kensuke. So he tells him that essentially like Kensuke loves her and that he should go be with her. That she should go be with him. All right, and then Karu is like, hey, goodbye. You know, you and Kaji can have like this whatever life, and then go do your own thing and whatever, and work hard. And then he leaves, and then Shinji finally turns, and there's Rei with like her long hair standing there, and she's like very reluctant. She's like, no, I want to stay with you. And Shinji's like, the other Ray found fulfillment in Village 3. You could do the same. That's where you belong. You need to go. And then she's like, what about resetting the world? And he's like, I'm not going to reset the world. I'm just going to eliminate all the Evangelions. And then she's like, Neon Genesis. And I was like, slow clap? Some old bullshit. Oh, Anno. Jesus Christ. What have you done here? Anyway, so at that point she's satisfied and she smiles, and then we see her again in her like schoolgirl costume instead of like the entry plug with like long hair. And so she leaves, and then Shinji's like pulls the spear and he's about to use it on himself to destroy all the Evangelions, but then he stopped. Who stops him? Evangelion 13 stops him. How could it stop him? No one's there. But no, it's his mother. His mother kicks him out of the Evangelion 1 because she's Evangelion 0 or 1, and he realizes that she's been there with him all along. And in the English version he says something about her being inside him, and I'm like, I think you meant the other way around, but okay, whatever. And so then he uses the spear, or she uses the spear on herself, and then Shinji sees an image of her and Gendo being together again, and then all the Evangelions that have like ever existed vanish from like existence. And then Shinji's like floating away, and it looks like he might be in a lot of trouble, but then we see what do we see? Did we see Mari here? Oh no. So Shinji, then Shinji, he like awakens, and the whole thing turns into like Scrabble. So instead of being like animated, it turns into like that thing from like the series where it's like someone's like sketching on like paper and stuff, and it's animated like that. It's pretty cool actually. So we see that, and we see Shinji just sitting there thinking about everything that's occurred, and just like sitting by himself and being quiet. And then all of a sudden we see AV Unit 8 like roll down, and I thought at some point we saw her also be this is where it happens. Okay, so then she rolls down on AV Unit 8, and then she's like, kid of Dago or something. Like whatever bullshit she says, and she pops out. She's like, I told you I was gonna come get you. And then he's like, Mari, and then she pops out and dives into the water, and as soon as she hits the water from the Evangelion, the whole thing turns back into like a normal thing, and then the AV units go up, and we see all like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 all disappear as well, and then she's floating there, and then she's like, I told you I'd come get you, and then it kind of like fades away out of this. Like I said, we see the escape pods, and there's the people walking away, and that's all implied and stuff. Okay, so then we get to like a final sequence, and in the sequence it's like a train station, and it's like modern Tokyo or whatever, and then we see Rei and Karu, and there's a third girl there, but it looks like she has black hair. So my assumption is that that's supposed to be Asuka, but she doesn't have red hair. And then some people are like, oh, the Rei from the movie, or the Asuka from these movies is supposed to have brown hair, but she still has like auburn hair, like it's like red. It's red, right? So she has like red hair. And she's like, they're all like, they look like they're just normal like teenagers or young adults, and they're just hanging out this train station. And I went back and looked at that scene a couple more times and was like, is that supposed to be Asuka? Like, she has like black hair. Like, I don't understand. But it just shows 3 people, and one of them's obviously Rei talking to obviously Karu, so I'm just assuming it's supposed to be Asuka. Anyway, and then Shinji's sitting on a bench just like hanging out, and then we see Mari, and she's dressed like an adult, and Shinji's like an adult, and he's still got the collar on, and then we see Mari roll up, and she covers his eyes, and she's like, guess who? And he's like, oh, is it a brown-haired, glasses-wearing girl with big boobs? And she's like, you got it. And then she like sniffs him, and she's like, you smell good. And he's like, well, you look really cute. And she's like, oh, you really are an adult now. And then she takes off the collar and spins it around, and then we get like the music sequence, and she reaches out her hand, and he grabs her hand, and then they like run out of the train station, and then we see like then we get like a pan out shot, and it's like real life of like some town in Japan, and then the music plays, and that's the end credits. So what did I think? Well, I'm not a big fan of the redo series. Maybe I'll watch it again in a couple of years, and I'll have a change of heart because I've already seen it, and like this was all new and kind of like, I don't know about any of this stuff. I know I read something recently or saw a video where someone was talking about how like the show is supposed to be much more Asuka focused, which I would have appreciated because like Asuka. I mean, Mari is unobjectively like a banger in terms of look and attitude, but there's something about Asuka, again, like with me personally, like this was like my tsundere crush, like the second anime girl I'd ever seen that I had like a waifu crush on, right after Rei from who's Sailor Mars from Sailor Moon. So I have a lot of strong feelings about Asuka, and I don't feel like they did her dirty. I just wanted more resolution, and like she kind of seems like she got a resolution being with Kensuke.
at the end there, but we don't see it. And then I feel kind of like we get these haphazard, like her growing up, and like I almost feel like it's just like, oh, here, take. I'd almost rather just not have that. Just be like, I'm gonna rescue Asuka, and then he like rescues her, and she pops out and goes, and then I'm gonna rescue, and then Karu, he rescues him, and then we get like more of like Mari and him. And the whole thing with Mari and him seems kind of odd. It was almost like Anno wanted to like have them be a couple, and I don't know if it's just like appease the fans because like shipping and bullshit like that. They don't actually do anything, right? Besides the holding hands and talking about big boobs and stuff. But there's definitely like the way it's shot. I feel like, are they supposed to be getting together? Which is odd, because she was like there to help raise him when he was a child. But now it's different because it's a different world, or like he created a new world just for him and Mari and Asuka and Rei and Karu, but they're not like hanging out at all, which is, I'm not a fan of that either. I much prefer the end of Evangelion story that he like recreated that world where they could just all be high school kids and be friends, and Mari can like slot in there. But I just feel like we did not get enough Mari ever in this series. Like we see her doing her like rad thing and then the parachute thing in the second movie. Then in the third movie, we like barely get her at all. And then in this movie, we get a lot more of her, but it's like, why is Shinji just going along with this chick that he barely knows? Like, he literally halfway through this movie is like, who are you? Are you the parachute girl? And then he's like trusting his life to her for like, just because, right? And then it's just kind of like, what is happening? And so that whole thing is like very interesting, I have to say, because it's just like, what, why, what's going on? Sorry, I was just trying to open up Google Gmail on my work computer, and the whole thing like is shut down apparently. Anyway, okay, so yeah, so I don't know. I want more. I obviously want more Asuka, always more Asuka, but just that I feel like you needed like another movie of just like kind of like that. The end of Evangelion is technically 2 episodes, and you have the first episode, which is like all the fun anime bullshit, mechs fighting and all that stuff, and then the second episode was like all the philosophical and wrap up. Like I feel like there was so much bullshit going on, and so many words and so many like nonsensical things in this, that by the time we got to like the point where it's like, okay, now we're gonna wrap up like Rei, Karu, and Asuka and Mari, it's like there was no time, and it was just like rushed through, and like there's like an implication that like there's a lot of implications, or not implications, there's a lot of impliedments. I don't know how else if I can say it. There's a lot of implying things, which I like anime because it's somewhat ambiguous, but I feel like I like the ambiguity. I don't feel like the ambiguity is done well in this movie specifically, because like the first half is fine. It's just like an interesting story, interesting stuff's happening. We get some like funny stuff, but like the second half is just, I feel like the whole thing like falls apart, because then it's like, well, I got a lot more questions and none of it's answered, and nothing's really detailed, and you're bringing up all this other bullshit, and you're calling Mari like Judas Iscariot, and like there's no movies after this, right? This came out like 2 years ago, and there's been no announcement. I don't think there's any plan on doing it whatsoever. I know and here's the thing, I know at some point I had heard something, and I don't know how valid this is, that they were planning, like, they were going to plan to keep doing this, right? Like, at some point, I know Anno wanted to turn Evangelion into, like, Gundam, which is, like, a forever thing that will continue to exist and do things. And I haven't watched any Gundam. I hear it's good. It's just one of those things, it's, like, it's a lot to invest into. It's like One Piece. But with this, it's, like, I feel like you were setting up stuff, and then it just did not resolve. Like, you just came to a point, and you're like, all right, time to end it. So, which is literally what happened with the original series. But I feel like the original series, you made like a good philosophical point there at the end, and it was just, and the thing with like Shinji just like coming to terms with himself and like the people around him and being happy and choosing life and to live and stuff was like a good message, and like it was interesting. And like I don't mind a little ambiguity about stuff, but again, it's like everything's ambiguous. Like what happened to Asuka? What happened to the village? What happened to this? Are they in real life? Or are they not in real life? What happened to Mari and Shinji? Are they together? Are they not together? Are Karu and Rei together? Like it's like you bring all this stuff up and then you're just like, all right, bye. And it's like, I guess I can just do fan fiction, or like what do I want to happen? But and then again, not really seeing Asuka in that final shot. I mean, maybe I'm just blind. Like I said, I watched it twice, and I'm like, there's another girl over there, but I guess that's supposed to be her. I would assume that's supposed to be her, but like, I don't know why it's just not like a redheaded chick. Anyway, yeah, it's more disappointment. Like everything else about this was interesting. It was an interesting take, interesting stuff going on, but I feel like I got to go and watch like
an hour. I gotta go watch like 2 hours of like YouTube philosophy about Evangelion and like the story to people who like watch frame by frame kind of stuff like EFAP or whatever to fully understand what I'm supposed to be getting out of this. And like I just tell these like loose stories and like kind of talk about my feelings about them, like, right? But it's like I feel like it's impossible, and I feel like if I have to go through all that to understand something, like it's a bullshit story, right? And it's just like it's like unsatisfying because it's like, okay, now I gotta go read a book to understand what happened after this. Like I want to read a book because I want to read a book because it has a contained story, not because I need to understand like what the philosophical like commentary on like this crazy bullshit is. Anyway, animation's good. I like Mario as an add-in character. I again, it's like generally I like what was going on. I just like the ending just like dropped the ball completely, and I might be in the minority, but I don't know if I'm gonna look it up. But yeah, so there you go. There's Evangelion 3.01 plus 1.01 Thrice Upon a Time. It was fun until the very end there, and then but yeah, animation's good and like all the other stuff, and yeah, good stuff, I guess. I don't know. I still feel very conflicted about calling it good. It was fine. Just watch the original Evangelion. Don't even watch any of Evangelion. Just end of Evangelion, man. Kind of sucked. This whole beach thing too, people are really a big fan of. I was like never that big of a fan. It's like, why are you choking out your girlfriend who's like Eve when you're like starting a new world? And then here it's just like, bye Asuka, and it's like bye, and it's like, okay. Okay. I actually do like that part of their story where it's like she admits that she had a crush on him once, but now she's an adult, and then later on he's like, I had a crush on you too. So it's kind of like this forlorn like loss. Like if it wasn't for the Evangelions, if it wasn't for all this bullshit, they could have been together. But now it's like way past that time, and it's time to like move on with their lives and do other things, right? So it's kind of like bittersweet. So I did like that. I think that's the thing I like the best about the ending. But the whole Karu thing is just like, what is this? Why is Kaji here? And then Rei just like, okay, hi Rei. Yeah, there's a village. Go get the fuck out of here. And then the thing at the very end was the most frustrating, because it's like, what is this? Like, why is this here? It should just ended. Mario should just land in the water and like reached, and then he should have pulled her out of the water, and she should have said something like, told you I'd come get you. I told you I'd bring you back, and then it ends. Right? Anyway, whatever. Okay. A lot of anime and video games like to do this bullshit. Like Illusion of Gaia did like the same thing, if you ever played that game, where at the end it's just like, oh, now we're all living in modern civilization. Some other shit did that too. Anyway, okay. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.